Alright guys, buckle in, this could be a long video. So 2025 could very well be considered the year of the RPG due to the numerous amounts of RPGs that have come out this year, both good and bad, but at the end of the day, variety is a good thing. Having options, having games that you can choose to play or not play, games that are full price, games that are again on sale, games that are on Game Pass, it's a win. There are obviously going to be games that are better than others, but at the end of the day, more variety is not a bad thing. Speaking of variety, from Game Rant, new game with very positive reviews has serious Skyrim meets dark fantasy vibes. And what they're talking about here is Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, a game from a smaller studio known as Questline, published by Awaken Realms. And this is a game set 600 years after the death of King Arthur, so it's set in Arthurian legend. Has a very cool aesthetic, almost like a grim Dark Souls type of environment, again, kind of that gothic horror, but it has gameplay mechanics and, open world more similar to what we see with Elder Scrolls. So again, this is a game that has a much smaller budget, much smaller studio, more in line with games like Expedition 33, Clair Obscur, as we've seen previously this year, from these smaller studios of hardcore fanatical developers who love what they're doing, who are obsessed with making it good, who love the source material, love the story that they're trying to tell, and who want to deliver a great product. On top of this fact, this is a game that is $45. $45 for 40 to 70 hours of just the actual story plus side quests. That is a huge win. That's a massive W. When you see games like Doom the Dark Ages that are just falling at the wayside on Steam because nobody wants to spend $70 or $80 on a game, when that sweet spot is $40 to $50, and that's reasonable. There's nothing irrational when you expect developers to put a game out there that's affordable. I don't think it's asking too much. But again, Legendary Drop says another sub-50 developer game. Insanely ambitious, really impressed. It has bugs and issues, but it's only going to improve from here. Arthurian lore is such an untapped fantasy market in games. The world and setting are so sick, and I would have to agree. From what I've seen, this game looks like a lot of fun. If I had more time, I would pick this up and play it. But I've got a massive backlog and no time because baseball season continues to just, we're just treading on. So if you look at the Steam charts, here's another fascinating thing to think about. AA game, very little marketing. Again, a lot of people had never even heard of this game. In fact, I want to say that Asmongold had referenced not only hearing about this game the day that it launched. In 2 days, it already has a peak of 20,000 players, which sure, compared to other AAA massive titles, or like if you look at the Oblivion Remastered on Steam, it had like 150,000 people playing it in the first 24 hours or some crazy number. It doesn't seem like much, but you have to remember, again, this is not a studio that spent a fortune to make this game. It's a small studio, AA developer, and when you compare this game's numbers to games like Avowed, and you look at the fact that Avowed never even managed to crack 20,000 players on Steam when it launched alongside Game Pass, this tells you all you need to know, especially given the fact that Avowed seemed to be chasing the Elder Scrolls audience and yet somehow couldn't capitalize on it despite having, again, the backing of Microsoft. This has since led to Kerry Patel, the director of Avowed, leaving Obsidian after 12 years. And again, this is something that we're going to see more and more of, is these people jumping ship as their studios continue to implode, because the reality is nobody cared about Avowed. Even if you want to say Avowed wasn't a bad game, okay, I'll hear that out. I'll listen to you about that. If you really loved Avowed, I can entertain that conversation. But the vast majority of people did not have any interest or care to play this game. And something else to think about. Avowed took 6 years and 2 reboots to make. Games that take this long should not fail so utterly. And this definitely leads to the issue that we'll see, talking about more and more of this as we get into the video, about this myth of the modern audience and chasing an audience that doesn't exist, rather than, courting the core fan base of games, the actual gaming industry's customers, the gamers. They're trying to replace these people for God only knows what reason. It doesn't make any sense to me personally. So again, Expedition 33, Clair Obscur, another game that is absolutely fantastic, definitely a Game of the Year contender, and I get it, Game of the Year doesn't really matter, other than the fact that this game is fan-freaking-tastic. Everybody, the critics and the fans, the gamers themselves, love this game. So again, this is a game that took about 5 years to make. Compare that to Avowed, compare that to other games that have just taken longer and done nothing as far as the actual sales of the game go. And this is a massive, massive feat, especially given the fact that this is a group of people, about 30 or so at this studio, that left Ubisoft, and they pulled people from different corners of the internet and recruited people to create this game, the story, to voice the characters, and it has become one of the biggest games, I would say, of the decade. Absolutely fantastic success. And what's even funnier is the fact that while the game is still being praised by the critics and the media, they're still trying to dismiss the fact that this game was made by a small group of people, with articles like this from Rock Paper Shotgun saying, no, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 wasn't made by 30 people. It's like that whole actually meme that you'll see on Reddit. At the end of the day, they're saying, yeah, they had to hire other people and outsource certain things, sure. But at the end of the day, it was still a core team of around 30 people at the studio. The reason that we're seeing this, the reason we're seeing articles like that, where even if they are praising Clair Obscur, they have to tear it down a little bit, is from things like this, from PC Gamer. Former Dragon Age writer says Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and Baldur's Gate 3 prove what's possible when a game is given time to cook. Now, full stop. I cannot believe that Andy Chalk over at PC Gamer put this article with this headline out, not expecting people to scratch their head and go, WTF, what are you guys talking about? And people pointed this out right away. Pirate Nation saying, Dragon Age Veilguard writer said Expedition 33 succeeded because they got time to cook. They got time to add surgery scars to please the mentally ill modern audience. And again, this is that myth of the modern audience, where they add to all these like wonderful bonus features like, the vitiligo and the surgery scars, right? Atreus pointing out that Dragon Age Veilguard was literally in development for 10 years. And then somebody in response to him down here, the Abysmal Critic, says they switched Veilguard from being a multiplayer game to single player probably 4 years or so before release. So let's pretend to be nice and start the development timer there. Expedition 33 was in development for 5 years. That extra year would not have fixed anything, and that is 100% accurate. Nure says, time to cook. Veilguard was in development hell for a decade. They had plenty of time to cook. They had all the right ingredients. Every time I think about the art book and what could have been, I see red. What they lacked wasn't time. It was the skill to make anything worth serving. But this is what the media is going to do. They're going to run these stories with these people over at Bioware who are trying their hardest to run defense for this game and defense for the choices that they made. And they're trying to blame it on the bigots and the chuds, as you'll see again in just a few minutes here. Wolfheart FPS, somebody who I did watch his video on Veilguard before the game came out, and while it definitely seemed like he was trying to be very sensitive with what he said, he couldn't even hide the fact that the game sucked. He says, I feel like time to cook only truly helps if you accompany it with highly skilled devs that are given creative freedom and are working under the leadership of higher-ups that actually understand what makes their product good from a gamer's perspective. Never going to have the latter with giant corporations like EA or Ubisoft or Activision running the show, but hey, maybe they can at least start moving slightly in the right direction. I doubt it, but we will see. Gets even better. Because as of 14 hours ago, there's this article here from Games Radar Plus that says Dragon Age Maestro says EA has always spoken about a hypothetical nerd cave full of diehard RPG fans who would always show up, so you didn't have to try and appeal to them. Now we're starting to see through the cracks here. We're starting to understand what the issue is. A Dragon Age veteran says EA liked to refer to a cave where RPG fans who could be trusted to buy anything the genre threw at them would dwell. Speaking to Gamer Radar Plus, Bioware veteran David Geider explained that before he left Bioware, his taste had become somewhat, quote, old-fashioned in EA's eyes. He said, I was very vocal on the Dragon Age team. I was always trying to push it to our traditional mechanics, and that wasn't very welcome in the EA sphere. He says that EA considered those mechanics the kind that shaped games like Dragon Age Origins to be slow and cumbersome rather than the actiony and slick presentation that the studio was being pushed toward. And this makes perfect sense when you think about the gameplay of Dragon Age Veilguard compared to the older games. It didn't even look like the same franchise. That meant that Geider's views were often not very welcome despite his long tenure at the studio and work on many of its most famous RPGs. Legendary Drop says, I love how often our worst assumptions about AAA are proven right, and it seems like time and time again they're proven right. But it gets better, guys. It gets even better, because now we are not just seeing former developers coming out criticizing Bioware. We're not seeing people jumping ship from studios, but now we have a voice actress. Oh yes, a voice actress coming out to the defense of Dragon Age Veilguard. From IGN, Dragon Age Veilguard star absolutely devastated over backlash, says people wanted to see Bioware fail. I mean, she's not wrong there. Quote, it's an idiotic stance to take. Dragon Age star Alex Woolton Reagan has given her personal response to the backlash faced by last year's Dragon Age Veilguard and blamed the mixed reactions on people who wanted to see the game fail or wanted to see Bioware fail. The actor who plays the female Inquisitor in both Dragon Age Inquisition and Dragon Age Veilguard told IGN that she was absolutely devastated to see Bioware's latest game fail to find a large audience despite mostly positive review scores from the critics. That's because the critics don't matter, honey. That's the way life works. Speaking during a new interview discussing her many iconic video game characters to date, as well as her role in Microsoft's upcoming Perfect Dark reboot. Yes, she is the voice of man-jawed Joanna Dark. Just keep that in mind. Wilton Reagan said that she had loved her time as a Bioware's Inquisitor, though did not believe the character would now return. She says, "I feel absolutely devastated for Bioware as a studio that they got such mixed reactions to the game. I personally thought it was a really strong game. I thought it was just Bioware being more Bioware. I also think a lot of people kind of wanted to see it fail or wanted to see Bioware fail, either because they're just really bad people on the internet, of which there are unfortunately many, as we have discovered." So, of course, blame the fans. Blame the bigots, blame the chuds. We don't like the transgender scars. We don't like the vitiligo and seeing all the most hideous, ugly, gender-confused, mentally ill characters in games. So blame the chuds. At launch, the Veilguard was review bombed online, criticism of the game being woke, centered on its inclusion of a non-binary companion character who was horribly written, by the way, and the ability for the player to choose to be transgender. Yeah, because it's retarded. It's weird. On Steam, Dragon Age Veilguard now sits with a mixed player response with user-defined tags for the game describing it under LGBTQ and politics label. Well, that's just kind of the way it goes. And of course, if you don't remember what this Joanna Dark character looks like, this is, of course, the character that Alex Woolton Reagan is playing with, of course, the man jaw, as we've seen time and time again. But again, just listen to her own words from BAFTA Games, a TED Talk with Alex Woolton Reagan on her pick for most influential game of all time. I've gone ahead to the 25-second mark on this video because I think it's important that you hear where her priorities are from her own words here.
Can't forget about Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. Lara Croft was voted most iconic video game character ever last year at the BAFTA Game Awards. So you've got to give Lara a shout out for female representation, and Joanna Dark, obviously, know her, love her, Perfect Dark, brilliant. If you're looking at stories, character creation, inclusivity, Bioware. So you have to look at all of the Mass Effects and all of the Dragon Ages, and really there you've got your character creation, you've got choosing your story, you've got choosing your ending, you've got inclusive representation, and that leads to Baldur's Gate 3, and I think I've solved the mystery, maybe? Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. What is your most influential video game of all time?
Why do these people always have the crazy eyes? That's what I want to know. But of course, her priorities, representation and inclusivity. Time and time again, it's the way it goes. And you can just tell, just a quick, scan at like her socials, her Blue Sky, hey, trans, queer, non-binary friends, you matter, and I'm sorry it's such a shitty, scary, oppressive time for y'all right now. Context, this is a post from 4 months ago when Trump got reelected. Just so we have context for that. But you've always been here, you will always be here. The bigots come and go over the years. The important thing is you remain here exactly as you are. But they come and go too. I'm so confused. This doesn't make any sense because all people come and go. We all live and we all die. Expanding this to also include intersex, genderqueer, gender fluid, it sounds sticky and gross, agender, etc., for the avoidance of doubt, you are all welcome and wanted here. But it gets better. Can we say the quiet part out loud now? Musk is clearly not a well man, is he? Well, I don't like Elon Musk personally, but that's a whole different topic. Obviously, there's much to deplore in many of these overstuffed oligarchs, but Musk strikes me as a more volatile, desperate to be liked, narcissistic, broken, erratic, immoral, amoral, etc. than the rest. Thoughts? ? So yeah, that's where her priorities are. It's even funnier too, if you want to tie a bow on this video and talk about how insane these voice actors are. This is a post from her, from Alex Woolton Reagan, from March 13th of this year, from an Entertainment Weekly interview they did with a buttload of voice actors. Ironically, sitting right here in the front is the lesbian, they, them, she, her, Erika Ishii, the voice of the Ghost of Yotei protagonist. And of course, there's a quote from this article right here where she says, "For multiple projects I've been on, I received lots of online abuse from trolls." False. She has everyone blocked. Nobody even knew who she was until we all discovered her name for the Ghost of Yotei casting. And we're like, who is this person and why does she have all of us blocked? So again, I don't understand this whole years of abuse argument, but we'll continue. "That doesn't bother me," she says, "but it's interesting that some companies are beginning to offer support in the form of a PR company or their community manager or even a sheet of do's and do-nots for what to discuss online. Interesting." She then says, "You rail against the man and then one day you wake up and you are the man. I shitposted about video games quite a lot. I still do. Only now suddenly I'm a literal face of a video game. So now you have to separate out what's professional to post even on your personal channel. Yeah, she has a little bit of a difficulty with that, because I remember this post from not too long ago where she famously said F TERFs. And if you don't know what a TERF is, that's a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, i.e. anybody who doesn't think men belong in a women's bathroom.
Can I say TERFs? Can I say TERFs? TERFs.
Yeah, there you go. And ironically, again, going back to BioWare and Dragon Age, this article from February 3rd from That Park Place, Ghost Yote fan concerns increase. Game writers also worked on Dragon Age, the Veilguard, and Mass Effect Andromeda. So again, two of the writers from BioWare who worked on the Veilguard are working on the Ghost Yote, featuring Erica Ishii, somebody who is just like Alex Bolton Reagan. These people are all insane. Dragon Age, the Veilguard. Again, a game that they have tried so hard to defend tooth and nail, and we're still hearing about how basically it's not a bad game, it's just you guys are a bunch of evil bigot chuds. Anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it right there. Let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comments, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Alright, and if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you for being here. I do have two channels, Minimal Effort Podcast, as well as my gaming channel. I do have a Twitch and Kick for my gaming channel. We do live streams over there occasionally, maybe once a week. And then if you are in the market for a new PC, make sure to check out Meta PCs. Click the link I have down below. Use code TBO at checkout for a special discount. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.